All right, it is that time again. Time for me to do power rankings. Unfortunately, we have increased the size of the league, which means this is going to take even longer for me. I'll try to get through it quick, and I do have all the teams here, but it may take me a second or two to actually figure out which one's which. So, first off, I believe this is the Skirmish League. So we have the CSS, which these guys, and they have essentially Psy Spam Sneasler, which is very similar to my season one team, so it's always nice. They have Prankster Tailwind with Breloom, which is never bad, but it also boosts Delphox, which is good too. Unfortunately, Prankster, Illumise, and DDF kind of work against each other a little. Not to say it can't work, but just be careful with your prankster moves there. Kind of loses a little value off of that. Espeon and Umbreon are interesting choices. I think that Umbreon in particular is very good at controlling the pace of the game and bringing things down to be slower and kind of whittle away at the opponent. Espeon, on the other hand, typically I've seen it run well with things like Terra Fairy Dazzling Gleam and stuff. And so it kind of fits more along the lines of those offensive cores that are kind of here in DD Sneasler and Delphox, Toxtricity even, and Breloom to an extent. So I do think this is a nice fit, but the unfortunate part is it's another psychic type. Um, so looking at all these types, there are fairly obvious and exploitable weaknesses. Like, especially, I mean, even bug types. Like, there are two Pokemon that resist it, and both are poison. So, like, if you just bring bug and ground, you beat this team. The ground types also not really resisted by much. Like, yeah, Illumise resisted, but if you're in psychic terrain, Illumise isn't really doing anything to begin with. In DDF, I really like. I highly support it being the number one pick of the draft, but um, I do think that some of these Pokemon kind of conflict with what you're trying to do with this, right? Because in DDF is there to kind of support and enable hyper offense stuff with expanding force and with Sneasler unburdened stuff, and I think that's great. And it has really nice tools for redirection and setting up Trick Room and things. But the unfortunate part is this team actually doesn't really like having Trick Room up. Like the slowest Pokemon is Umbreon, and Umbreon isn't going to do much with Trick Room up, quite frankly. So, especially not at 65 base speed. Like most teams have slower Pokemon. So really, I'm shocked by this Illumise because this team is already very fast, especially with Unburdened Sneasler and stuff. Um, and Electro Hisui. Oh gosh, this team is really fast. It has no slow mode option. Um, the good thing is, I guess, in DDF gets imprisoned Trick Room to potentially stop that, but then you're not clicking Follow Me, which is 99% of the time bad. But it's really, really hard to go wrong with Psychic Terrain, Sneasler, Expanding Force Spam, Breloom with Spore. I actually quite like Toxtricity as an offensive pick, especially with redirection. Just watch out for the earthquakes. And so overall, I mean, the team kind of conflicts. I don't really know what Honchkrow does outside of being a dark and flying type. Um, but beyond that, that's kind of my view on this team. I think that it's good and it will do well, specifically probably because of like these five and this mon. Illumise may be brought sometimes, but I really expect to see mainly these two, this one, and then like one of these two every time. And so I think that's a good core. I think it's fairly repetitive in types. I think it has obvious and exploitable weaknesses on the defensive end. Like nothing in this team lives in Eruption except for maybe Umbreon. But like, I don't know. Let's see. Let's see. Actually, yeah. I think B tier is fine. So I don't even have to move that one. All right. Next. BRE. 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 What is BRE? It's a great question. I don't know. Oh, these guys. Okay. I'm gonna actually add a row below and then make that the current. Well, current. Cool. There we go. So these are current. So they have King Gambit, Primarina, Amoonguss, Garchomp. Wow. Very strong core. Like these four can be brought every time. Grafai Slaking is quite nice. Slaking is really powerful in terms of base stats, and it has a really nice speed tier. Actually, quite a few of these have a really nice speed tier, like Garchomp being 102, just outspeeding all of the base 100s that are in the metagame. It's very nice. Scyther, either with Eviolite or I've even seen some with like maybe they're all Eviolite, but you can definitely run Scyther with other options because it has the same base stats as Scizor. It's distributed differently. And this thing with like dual wing beat with technician and stuff, it's quite strong. Rotom Fan, it's an electric type. I mean, it does the same thing that all the other Rotoms do. It just doesn't have the nice stab move that the other ones do. Air Slash is good, but like if you want a flying type, bring Scyther. This is mainly here for electric coverage, which I don't mind. It's cheap, so I definitely don't mind it. Hypno is annoying. It gets a lot of cool stuff as far as Thunder Wave and all sorts of other things, but it's not bad. I mean, for like 1 or 2 points, I think it is. It's really good actually, especially with like inner focus. Probably does it get? Does anything get Trick Room? Oh, it gets Trick Room. Okay, cool. So it has inner focus Trick Room. Great. Slap a Mental Herb on it, and you're pretty much guaranteed to get that up, which is very nice. 2 Rage Powder users, which is great. Skull Villain, I think gets some niche things. Like I know outside of being a cheap fire type, its spicy extract move is probably pretty good. I'm honestly not sure what you'd use it on. Like I know it gives like +2 attack, -1 defense or something. To whatever target you targeted it. Which honestly paired with something like Garchomp could be cool or slacking or something. I think Grafai gets Sunny Day. Let me check. Okay. Yeah. Grafai gets Prankster Sunny Day, which is nice. So you can definitely like activate its chlorophyll if you want. Moody, maybe 1 week. I mean, I somewhat expect to see it. Um, but yeah, beyond those kind of lower tier picks, King Gambit is so consistent. With Defiant or even kind of Supreme Overlord in some situations if your opponent isn't running um, Intimidate. But like it is just so consistent. It can run AV, it can run black glasses, it can run safety goggles or some other item if you're worried about some sort of or like Lumberry even to cover for sleep and burn. It has so many options and it just has such good stats. Like it's so bulky. And it works great in Trick Room. It's really unfortunate that Hypno is actually the only Trick Room user because these three love Trick Room. It would be perfect for them to be in Trick Room, but they do not. Do they have Tailwind outside of Scizor? Nope, just Scizor. Or sorry, Scyther. Um, it's really interesting because this team does not have speed control very well. Like Scyther and Hypno, they're okay, but I don't know. They're not the most reliable speed form of speed control. Like, yes, you have priority in King Gambit, but as soon as someone sets up Trick Room or with slower Pokemon, or even a Tailwind with middling speed Pokemon, like you just outspeed this entire team, or you get to go first every time. And I think that causes a lot of issues in here, particularly. Uh, but despite that lack of speed control, the Pokemon themselves are just so strong. Like King Gambit rarely will go down in one hit. Primarina can, but if you invest in its bulk, it also won't. Amoonguss can redirect and live hits, so it probably works to save some of these other Pokemon from dying, some of the more frail options. Grafai, I'm really excited to see it get use. I'm not excited to see it next to Slaking. Um, but it is interesting, and I'm interested to see what it does as far as like because I don't know why it's not on here, but this thing totally gets fake out. It gets like parting shot, prankster parting shot. Ooh, no, never mind. I was gonna say defiant, but no, you can't self target and get the defiant boost. Um, yeah, it gets prankster sunny day for Scovillain if you want. I don't know. It gets some neat prankster moves, and I'd be interested in looking and seeing what that actually gets. Garchomp, very consistent. Actually, I think top three in usage at Dortmund. Um, it has been doing very well in regulation age. It's just such a nice speed tier. Very like consistent bulk. Like it's not going to live 1,000 attacks, but it can potentially live two, which means it's on the field for 3 turns. Um, and that's a huge nuisance. Despite that, I think that the lack of speed control is rather apparent. And so even though these mons are like really good and really consistent, and it has some cool gimmick stuff that you can bring every week, I do think that this is probably an A tier team. I can't give it S. I'm bordering between A and B here. I think it's a solid A team. Um, I think these aren't going to be ordered, so yeah. But I think this is an A tier because it's just these three are so good. These two are going to bring so many teams to shambles. This mon is so consistent, and then one of these to like back it all up if you wanted. Well, I guess you kind of that's what 5, 6. Yeah, I mean these are the 5 or the 6 that I expect to see most weeks, and then like niche one-offs here and there. And so I definitely think it can work. I think those are a really solid set of mons. Um, I just think that you know, it doesn't have the speed control. And as soon as Grafai goes down, or you didn't get it off on like the sketch off on Slake or not sketch, what is the move? Doodle. You didn't get the doodle off on swapping Slaking's ability. You just it's dead weight. Um, I'd almost be interested to see if they bring like these four, this mon, and then one of these four instead. Um, some weeks, but I relatively doubt it. Slaking's really good. But yeah, just because you don't have speed control and you do have several weaknesses, like if we ignore kind of those ones, yeah, none of this resist ground. Psychic, like ground and psychic, just kind of wash the team. And even fighting to a sense, like, yes, you have these, but like, Amoonguss dies to psychic, right? And then King Gambit dies to fighting. Ufai probably dies to fighting unless it's running Sash, just because it's so frail. Slaking dies to fighting. I don't know. It's just, you know, it's a good team. It's a very good team. It's just it's got some weaknesses, which is normal and to be expected. So I think it's definitely A tier, but this is a really solid core. Like, yeah. Next up, in. Uh, Rain. Rain and Ghosts. That's Rain beat up Ghosts. One thing I will say, a ton of like low base stat Pokemon. I mean, if you look at the stat lineup, the average is 477. That's really low. Yeah, and the fact that your fire and grass for your like fire, water, grass core are covered by Thwacky and Flareon, and then no fairy type in your fantasy core. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, look at these types. Look at that. Arcaludon is tanking everything for the resistances, but definitely a ground weakness for sure. Like if you being ground and electric, the only thing you don't hit on this team is I think Thwacky. Yeah, Thwacky's the only one that resists both for neutral. And then half of this stuff is weak. Like super effective, super effective, super effective, uh super effective, super effective, super effective. So like the only two that are neutral, or the only three that are neutral, are Mousehold, Sableye, and Thwacky. Yeah, actually Thwacky resists, but that's not good because none of those are bulky. Oh, actually no, Mousehold. Oh yeah, no, Mousehold's neutral. But yeah, Mousehold population bomb into Archeolodon or beat up as well. It's pretty common, and I expect to see it. It is good. Like I wouldn't be surprised to see some sort of maybe not, but some sort of weakness policy activation as well using Mousehold. It's fast. It's 111 base speed. So is Sneasel actually. I didn't realize this thing was 115 speed. But it's also very frail, and it doesn't get the same. Actually, no, it does. So it'll have fake out, and it has inner focus in particular, which means it's actually probably also reliable for getting Archelodon up. Does it get well, I don't expect it to get Mach Punch. Vacuum. Either the priority. Oh, it does. Okay, cool. So it does get Vacuum Wave, which is very interesting because that means you can self proc um, an Archelodon weakness policy, or even this would be really funny if you had a Mousehold weakness policy and you just population bombed everything. Um, I don't know. It kind of depends, but I'm going off on tangents about this. The beat up strategy for Archelodon, like the stamina, it's great. Stalwart, I actually expect to see some use and draft specifically because avoiding redirection is absurd. But this mon alone is a hassle to deal with. It's really hard to break through. Mousehold is also kind of annoying. It gets doesn't get Encore. Yeah, it does get Encore. A lot of Pokemon on this team get Encore. Goodness. Gets Encore, but most importantly, it gets Follow Me and Friend Guard, which make Archelodon even harder to break through, which is yikes. And then Population Bomb also is nothing to scoff at either. Like, I mean, we saw it KO Dragonite for the regional winning game um, in one hit because it's just really strong. Because I don't even know what the base power is, but it has the potential to do damage when you don't expect it to. Even if you're putting the other Pokemon in some sort of threat or some sort of pin, Mousehold itself can break through a lot of those, and that's part of what makes it a really good redirector. Pelipper, I've said this time and time again. It's probably the best flying type, specifically because it gets Hurricane accurate by itself. Um, and so it's really strong. It sets rain for Archaludon. It sets rain for even Quaquaval. Um, it gets Weather Wall, which is nice, and Wide Guard, which is potentially nice in certain matchups. But overall, like Pelipper's consistent. It gets Tailwind too. It's a much more consistent Tailwind setter than Scyther is, in my opinion. So that's good. And then Gengar's good. It's it gets haze and it gets trick and stuff, but for the most part, you're gonna be using it as in like an offensive piece. And it's almost like Flutter Mane was, where you just like you're fast and you hit hard special attack, but you can also do things like use Icy Wind and Taunt, because I believe Gengar gets Icy Wind. You know it gets Haze. Icy Wind? Yeah, it also gets Icy Wind. So you can run it special offensively and get like really good damage out of it. Because I think it only has like 5 less special attack than Flutter does. But you can also run it like Icy Wind Taunt, and then like Shadow Ball or something, which is nice. Sableye is really annoying. Sableye is very strong. Does Sableye get Rain Dance too? Yeah. Okay, great. So not only do you have the Drizzle Rain, but you can also manually set Rain with Sableye, which helps in certain matchups where your opponent also brings weather. But more importantly, you get things like Prankster Taunt, Disable, Quash, Fake Out, Screens, Will-O-Wisp. It's absurdly good at disrupting teams, and I think that's why I went up in points this time, this season. But yeah, definitely is very strong. And so these, and then Cockaball's also good. It's kind of another situation of like these 6 are really good. These 3 are not so much good. But yeah, these 6, it'll be hard to find something that can consistently and effectively wall and break through these 6. Like if we take out these 3, fairy types you'd think are good, but no, there's a steel type and a poison type here ready to kind of counter. Electric types are good into this team, but then you don't do anything into like other. So like you really need a good consistent way to hit like maybe fighting an electric, like yeah, fighting electric. Ground is pretty good too, but then you don't hit Pelipper. Imagine if Gengar still had Levitate. 2 ground immunities. That'd be absurd. Um, Flying's quite good. But really, you just need to break through this guy. Like this guy, it's like this team is a raid boss. Like it's not, you're not fighting a whole team. You're fighting Archaudon and all of its friends, right? Like this guy is the one that will stay around and be there, the last mon on the field. You can kill Mousehold after it redirects like 3 attacks away from Archaudon. You can kill Pelipper after it sets up Rain for Archaudon to use Electro Shot and sets up Tailwind to make it go first and things like that, or Wide Guard to protect it. You can kill Sableye and have it be, have your entire team Will-O-Wisp and dealing less damage. But then do you get through Archaudon? And the answer to that, most of the time, is no, which makes this team really strong, even though it is top heavy. But I don't think it'll be as consistent or as powerful as the Primarina, King Gambit, Amoonguss team, just because some of these ones aren't as consistent. Like Gengar and Quackavole are nice, but they're not necessarily Pokemon you want to bring to every matchup. Like Gengar doesn't always get use, especially when you already have other Pokemon with Taunt, like Prankster Taunt, or other speed control or redirection. And for Quackavole, is it worth it bringing both Quackavole and Pelipper into most situations? Like, unless you need a fighting type, I'd say no. Pelipper's really strong on the water end. So really, you're like banking on these 3 plus Sableye, and like these 2 are good, but they will see significantly less use most likely. But in that case, I do think it is a little top heavy, and I think it's in particular very oriented around Archaudon, and so I'm going to put it in B tier. Goodness, low point mons galore. This seems actually pretty solid. I Oh, whoa, 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 whoa. What's up with this? This team does not have a ghost resist, but luckily it has a faster ghost type, which means it wins the trade. Um, but yeah, this team is actually very weak to ghost and dark. Rock is a little less common, so I'm not as concerned about that. But ghost and dark, bad types to be really weak to. Despite that, I think that having Dragapult is really nice because it can fill an offensive role or it can fill a supportive role. Because it gets. Does it get Breaking Swipe? Did it get it back? Oh, I guess I will never know. I can probably look it up, but it gets a lot of taunt, a lot of encore. Um, yeah, okay. Anyways, so Dragapult can fill a more supportive role. It can do things like set up light screen. It can set up. I actually got to look at this. So Dragapult gets Helping Hand. Yeah, this is what Thunder Wave and Substitute. So it gets a little bit of speed control, or not Substitute. Will-O-Wisp. It gets a little bit of speed control, damage mitigation. It gets Dragon Cheer, which is kind of fun. But more importantly, does it get Breaking Swipe? It did get Breaking Swipe back, which is really good because it means now you have spread coverage on your Dragon type moves, but you're also mitigating a lot of damage because it's like lowering your foe's attack by one is very strong. It makes it very consistent as an option that can not only go physical offensive, it can go specially offensive. It can go supportive with just a lot of speed, bulk. And really, you don't even need that much speed because what is it at 168? You outspeed the base 100s, so you only need to invest 44 points into speed to outspeed base 100 speed Pokemon, which means you can put all the rest into like that. And then now all of a sudden you have something that's really bulky, right? So it's like boom, boom, boom. And so now you have 189 attack. You outspeed all of the base 100s, and you got a decent chunk of bulk on you, which is very, very strong. So it's just a good all around draft Pokemon. And pairing that with something like Electivire that can redirect attacks away and also offer its own form of speed control if worst comes to worst, and somehow your opponent outspeeds Dragapult, whether that be with Tailwind or some other method. Um, it can use Electrowebs and things to slow the opponent down and bring it back to your speed control. Ninetales, it's great. Consistent, like it's kind of like Pelipper in that I think it's the best ice type just because it gets 100% accurate blizzards all the time. And then it also gets to set Aurora Veil, but really it's just a consistent ice and fairy attacker. And so many teams are weak to ice and fairy. Um, the issue is just can you defend it from the steel type attacks? And the answer is yes. You have a follow me redirector that has a resistance to the steel type attacks, which is really nice because it means that things like Bullet Punch aren't really going to break through and they're not going to deal too much to your redirector. So, really, I actually like these three quite a bit. Skeledirge is where it starts to get interesting. I don't know where Skeledirge fits onto this team. Does this team get Trick Room at all? Okay, it gets Grumpig as Trick Room, which it's kind of like Hypno. It's like some of these Pokemon want Trick Room, and Grumpig is not coming just to set Trick Room. Like it's not that good of a mod. It may have some other niche that it can use, but it's highly unlikely that you're going to bring it like every week just to set Trick Room. So Skeledirge really likes being Trick Room or in Tailwind, and I'm not entirely sure. Does anything else have Tailwind on this team? I think Decidueye does, but yeah, okay. Decidueye and Dodrio. Actually, uh, Dodrio's fast, but it's also one of those situations where it's kind of like Grumpig. You don't really want to be bringing it every week. So I can see Decidueye being it, but you'd rather have Decidueye attacking because it can start landing critical hits and start really breaking through teams very effectively. But you really want Skeledirge and Swampert in particular, either in Tailwind or in Trick Room. So unless you have, I mean, like you can maybe 66 and 60. You probably can actually outspeed base 100s if you like fully invest in speed and get an Electrowebs, but you really don't want to do that with these two Pokemon because they really want to be bulky. But despite that, I think both of these get Yawn on. Oh, okay, no, Skeledirge doesn't. But Skeledirge and Swampert are both kind of bulky and hard to get rid of, but Swampert is really strong in terms of being able to stick around, get Yawn up, and start disrupting the opponent's like positional play. Because Yawn is essentially a forced switch, um, unless you want to sacrifice the sleep charge, which is very nice. And then it just having the water and ground typing, it makes it so good because it I think its only weakness is grass. Yeah, its only weakness is grass. And even though it's a 4 times weakness, it has immunities to like electric types. It has a decent number of resistances, and then more importantly, it has pretty good offensive coverage. So like having a water type that does have access to a good special attacking water move, because Scald distribution got like very nerfed. Scald is on very few Pokemon now. But Swampert is one of the few Pokemon that get a good special attacking water move in the form of Water Pledge, I believe. So if you wanted to run something like Grass Pledge, Water Pledge, you could do that. But more importantly, you get an 80 base power consistent water move, which is missing in the game currently. So that's nice. And then more importantly, Earth Power. You get really good ground type coverage on this thing. And it is a physical attacker, technically, but I don't know that it really gets the moves to make use of it. And most of the time, you kind of want it to be especially offensive, anyways. Um, but you can definitely run it physical too. So, like, both Dragapult and Swampert, and even Electivire to an extent, yeah, somewhat Electivire, can all be run like either mixed attackers or either way. You know, like you can pick one depending on the week. Like if your opponent has a lot of really especially defensive Pokemon, you can bring more physical oriented Pokemon. And if they have a lot of physical, you can bring a little more special defensive, which is nice. Moving on from those two, Decidueye, like I said, it's very good, very consistent. It's very good at breaking through teams, especially if you have setup. Because with the what is it, the one of the lenses, I think the scope lens or something, that gives the or Razor Claw does the same thing where it raises the critical hit chance. Um, with that and Leaf Blade and Triple Arrows already having raised critical chances, um, it gets like a 50-50 chance of getting a critical hit, which can break through most setup as long as you don't die first, which you can avoid with Electivire, which is nice. Metagross is a good steel type. Clear Body's very good for a pretty heavily physically offensive team outside of things like Ninetales and Skeletor, Dragapult to a degree, and Glaceon, which we'll get to. But outside of that, it's pretty physical. So having Scrappy Decidueye and Clear Body Dragapult, Clear Body Metagross actually makes this team very consistent because it's very hard for you to whittle down at their offenses, which makes this team very, very threatening off the bat. The unfortunate part about it, though, is that it doesn't have the speed control, right? So Glaceon's good in the sense that it can Blizzard spam with Ninetales, but that's about it. Grumpig, we said, pretty much the only Trick Room, and then Dodrio is the only Tailwind that you really should. I mean, like you can use Tailwind Decidueye, but eh. But they're both not great Pokemon, which makes it difficult to use them over any of the other like really good options over here. And the same really holds for Wigglytuff and Rotom, which don't really do much. So really, I expect to see these seven, kind of swapping in and out based on matchup. But this is a really good spread of Pokemon, actually. Like, what happens if we actually get rid of these? Yeah, there is a weakness to ground. Um, Still Dark and Ghost Weak. That's interesting. I think that's a good team. I think a lot of this fluff kind of could have been used for something better, or two things that are better. Like, kind of take the points and put them towards two better mons. But like I think it's a solid team. I think this is definitely an A tier team. What is it? In R. Oh, definitely A tier. Oh, okay. This team's good. This team is actually one of the ones that when I was putting these teams in together, it's very strong. Like I think this is probably one of the best teams in the league. Rillaboom, Gudra, Gyarados. That combo makes it so you basically cannot die. Like Intimidate going down, you can get Thunder Wave up for speed control or taunt to stop some things. But like your high special defense from Gudra combined with Intimidate to give it even more bulk, combined with grassy terrain, combined with some Life Dew action. Like it's very difficult for that core to ever go down. And then you also have things like Chandelure to be a breaker, right? To like break through and have massive hits that just deal a lot of damage, and even Rhydon to an extent. Like if you give Rhydon an Eviolite, it's also going to be incredibly bulky, and it's also going to live a long time because of Rillaboom. It's also going to have some offensives and the terms like 130 base attack. That's higher than Rillaboom. Um, but Rillaboom is also really good because it gets the grassy terrain boost and can wood hammer things. Like, and Gyarados has high base attack too, has the same as Rillaboom at 125. And you can do things like Terra Flying and use Terra Blast and things like that. So like these Pokemon are really consistent, really strong. And then Chandelure, Rhydon, being able to come in as breakers, Malamar, Ribombi, and Magmar being able to kind of help as sort of support. So like Ribombi, I think it's Tailwind. Yeah, it gets Tailwind. So it gets Tailwind. It even gets like Sticky Webs, which honestly doesn't get much use in VGC, but kind of could in this team potentially. Um, but it's a fairy type with not too bad special attack, and it's just fast, so it's a good option. Um, and Malamar kind of is there for disruption as well. It can, even though it's got not the best stats. Actually, I'm looking at this for the first time in a while. It can get rolling if you have some sort of redirection, which you do in the form of Magmar. So it can definitely be good. It can be strong. If you do things like Superpower, where you get the contrary boost. But it's mostly there for things like, I mean, like you get Topsy Turvy, you get Switcheroo, you get Taunt, things like that. It's very nice. Does it get Trick Room as well? I feel like it does. Yeah, it does. So both Chandelure and Malamar get Trick Room, which honestly, this team is relatively middling. So having the option for either Tailwind or Trick Room is very nice. And then Magmar, as we talked about, it's just good. It's very good. I think two placements in top eight at Dortmund. But it's just follow me with Flame Body. It's bulky and it gets Will Wisp, Taunt, and a not half decent special attack stat that can deal some real damage with things like Overheat. And so it's really hard to find any faults in Magmar as a redirector, which is nice. Because this team, its entire thing is like these five are really consistent, and then pick one of these other good options. Um, like Toxicroak is good in terms of type coverage, fake out, and then Rhydon's just strong. It can be really bulky. You can even have Lightning Rod to redirect things from Gyarados, or Electric Text away from Gyarados. Or honestly, One really funny thing that you can do is have Gudra and Rhydon have Sap Sipper Gudra Terra Water, and then Rhydon on the field with Lightning Rod, and now Gudra has no weaknesses, which is kind of absurd. Um, yeah, so good luck to the rest of the league dealing with this team. I think it is our first S tier. It is very strong. Which one is it? DA, Draco Academy. Through my Draco Academia. Um, yeah. The New York Neuverns. They were the one to get Neuverns, not the other Neuverns. Unfortunate. Um, yeah. Ursaluna, Blood Moon, Sinistra, Oranguru, and Scrafty even, like these are all consistent. And they're trick room focused. They're kinda hard trick room. Uh, but that's not a bad thing. Because if you're getting like two hyper voices off from a Terra Normal Life Orb Ursaluna Blood Moon in Trick Room, there's very little that can take that. Very, very little. Um, and then even Ursaluna can be running Tailwind with things like Scizor and Rotom Wash that also benefit from Tailwind because of their middling speed stat. So like it's really not locked one way or the other, but you have two good trick room setters. You have two good enough, at least, tailwind setters. Like Noivern's a pretty consistent tailwind setter. And it's fast. It's good. And it gets frisk too, which gives you information. Scrafty's good. Scizor Scrafty's good because it just gets a lot of disruption tools. And with how uncommon fairy types are, which yes, it is weak to fairy, 4 times weak to fairy, in fact. But with how uncommon they are, especially in Reg H, like there's no Flutter Mane. Like it was already uncommon before, but there is no Flutter Mane. Like most teams, like I think the best fairy that I've seen thus far is Alolan Ninetales and then Ribombee, and then I think the like next best is Wigglytuff, wherever it is. Yeah, Wigglytuff. Like there's not really many good fairies. So Scrafty being like that is quite fine in draft because it gets so many useful tools. It gets knockoff, it gets drain punch, it gets fake out, it gets snarl, it gets a lot of different options. And you can run it with something like an assault vest and it becomes really bulky. In fact, this entire team is really quite bulky. The average defense is 100. That's really high, actually. Special defense is a little lower, but that's something that can be resolved with assault vests and things like snarl from Scrafty. So it's really good here. It's also slow, so it works in Trick Room too. Sinistra gets a busted move, gets redirection, gets strength sap, gets matcha gotcha, which just spreads burns. It's basically like Scald 2, but spread. Gets Trick Room. It's very versatile, and I really like it, especially with Hospitality. With how bulky this team is, you're going to get a lot of value out of switching Sinistra in and out. And so I'm excited to see how that works out. Scizor, it's consistent. It's a strong physical attacker with Technician, Bullet Punch, things like that. It's just good. I mean, it even gets. I think people run Thief Scizor, even though they have an item, just to have the Technician boosted Dark type move. Like it's pretty strong, and it gets a lot of options to utilize its actual ability, and it's got base 130 attack, so you get a Swords Dance up or something. It's it can roll through teams, which is good. Noivern, like we said, Frisk, Tailwind, get some neat options as far as offenses go. It's just not the strongest, you know. But it is good. Muck Muck does very little. I've actually looked into Muck, but Muck, the non-Alolan Muck, doesn't get too much. It gets Haze and Taunt, I guess. That's the extent of my knowledge on Muck, and it's also not like the strongest thing in the world. It is pretty bulky though, so like after an Intimidate, it probably is pretty hard to remove. So I'm interested in seeing how this goes with Muck. I'm interested to see if it gets brought at all. Rotom Wash again, theme of this team, very consistent. Outside of missing Hydro Pumps, this one has performed time and time again really well for like a decade almost in VGC. Um, and so it's just really consistent. And I like the fact that it's an electric type that is immune to ground. Very strong right now because there's not a lot of electric types. Just like there aren't a lot of fairy types, having a good electric type is good. Unfortunately, there is no fairy on this team, but I don't really think it matters because anything that you would hit with fairy, you can just kind of hit with two hyper voices or a blood moon or something. Um, and so I'm not super concerned about that. And it's got the team as a whole has really nice like weakness kind of coverage. Like, yeah, you're a little weak to dark, but it's nothing that will hurt your main physical attackers, right? So I think this team is actually very consistent. And it's kind of hard for me to point out flaws other than like, yeah, Cloth is here. Hi. Hi, Cloth. Everyone say hi to Cloth. Um, I don't think Anger Shell will get used because I think it raises. No, actually, Anger Shell is the one where it like raises stats after you get half health or below, I think. Yeah, maybe. Either that or something with critical hits. But either way, I mean, like, it can do something. It's a 1 or 2 point rock type. Like, it's Shell Smash. Um, it's fine. Like, it'll do okay. I don't expect it to see much use. I think, like, these five Rotom Wash and yeah, so like these six in Rotom Wash are kind of the main players, and they're just very consistent. Like, unless you can find some way to break through Ursaluna, you're going to have a lot of issues. And even though you can potentially break through Ursaluna, like if you do find a way to break through Ursaluna, you still have to deal with something like Sinistra. You still have to deal with like Scizor. You still have to deal with Rotom Wash that's there. It's like Ursaluna, both of the forms. The This one less so, but both of the forms of Ursaluna are so centralizing in the same way that Archaludon is. But this team isn't focused on Ursaluna as like the only thing that it's got going for it. It also has Scizor. It also has Rotom Wash. It also has Sinistcha. So it does the whole centralized Pokemon support thing with like, oh yeah, these guys all support Ursaluna. Like it does it a lot better than I think the Archarodon team does. And it's really hard to poke a hole in this team and find some place where it's wrong. So for that reason, is it S tier? I think it has to be. You have such good type coverage, such good team like archetypes and cores, and you got such consistent Pokemon. Like, yeah, I think this one's an S tier. Oh right. Oh mine. How fun. I think this is my worst team yet. I'll be honest. I like the team a lot. I think it's neat. I don't think it's good though. Um, Prankster Tailwind, Prankster Encore, things like that from Wounds of God. Very similar to Sableye. It's just very strong. And then it's also a fairy type. So like Moonblast is going to hit things, you know, if they're 4 times weak. Like if Scrafty's coming, yeah, a Moonblast is gonna chunk. But otherwise, I mean it does menial damage at best. But the main thing is it gets that Prankster Tailwind and it gets such good supportive options for actually being able to kind of control what's going on in the field, which is very nice. Um, Goldango alongside that Prankster Tailwind is very good. Spread move, hooray! Click buttons. Um, but it can do several different things as far as what sets it can run. Like it can run a bulkier set with kind of nasty plot. It can run a spec set. It can even run a scarf set if I'm not doing Whimsicott stuff. It can run Make It Rain and Shadow Ball. It can go like Thunderbolt and Dazzling Glee and Power Gym even if some team is weak to rock. So it gets a lot of options. It's just very consistent special attacker that can't really be brought down by a lot because it gets fake out immunity by being a ghost type. Can't be put to sleep because of the good of his gold ability. So it's like very consistent. Palmite, fake out, also somewhat consistent, but really cool in that it gets revival blessing. Which means like, okay, you killed Goldengo once, now do it again. It's like, that's unfortunate. But but it's also just strong as an electric type because it's pretty consistent. Like it's got 105 base speed, which is higher than most, and then it's got 115 attack, which isn't that much, but it also probably gets the most consistent electric type move in the format, and double shock, or the most consistent physical electric type move in double shock, which is really good. And it gets things like close combat as well, which is quite nice because it means the off that 115 base attack, like yes, you get fake out, yes, you get like revival blessing, yes, you get encore, yes, you get several other like good supportive moves like helping hand and stuff. But you also are a physically offensive threat, and so Palmat's actually quite good. I'm probably going to have to move it up in points next season. I don't know why it was 8. Crocodile, it's intimidate. It's like Garchomp, but if Garchomp got like 13 base stats removed from every stat. So like it's 10 points lower in speed, like 15 lower in special defense. I don't know about special attack. Like 10 points lower in defense and 13 points lower in attack, and then like 9 points lower in HP or something. Like it's just generally very good in the sense that it has a great typing and great abilities. Like Intimidate is wonderful in draft. Always good. Always a good VGC ability. But then it also gets the option for Moxie. So like if you have something like a Choice Scarf set or a Choice Band set that will pick up kills, you can start like snowballing as an offensive Pokemon as well. And so having that as an option with a Dark and Ground type, which are both good offensive types, is very neat. Armarouge. I don't see an Indeedee here, so you're welcome, everyone. But Armarouge without Indeedee is actually quite interesting because you play it very differently, right? So you can't just go around expanding, forcing everything. But it is very consistent because it gets Flash Fire. So it has the fire immunity, but it also has several options for things like setting up Trick Room. Like if I'm facing a really fast team, I don't have to match that speed with Tailwind. I can set Trick Room with Armarouge very consistently. Um, and that allows me to play in a slower game where Armarouge still gets things like Psychic, it still gets things like Armor Cannon, it still gets things like Energy Ball, and I think Aura Sphere even, or any form of Terra Blast that I decide that I want that day. Like I ran Terra Fairy Terra Blast a lot in Season 1. So that guy's back on the team. So is Vaporeon. Vaporeon actually got Scald. It's one of the few Pokemon that did get Scald. And it also gets Haze. It's also got a base 110 special attack. And it's bulky. 130 HP. So like it's all around good because like these three are really bulky. And like Goldango can be. So like Goldango can be bulky. These three are also bulky. Palmot and Whimsicott are great supports. So even though we have some immediate offensive pressure with several things that can happen, um, the worst case scenario for a team is like, okay, you're preparing for hyper offense, and now you have to sit here and break through 3 walls that are untouchable, right? So the bulk and variety is very nice, and each has like strong special attacking stats. So like Goldango has 133 special attack. That's really strong. 117 special or 117 attack on Crocodile. That's nothing to scoff at. That'll hit pretty hard if you have like a 95 base power, high horsepower coming your way. Um, Armarouge, again, 125 special attack, and it has strong moves like Armor Cannon and Psychic. Vaporeon, 110 special attack, gets things like Scald, Hydro Pump, Ice Beam. Uh, I think you can get Shadow Ball. Like it gets some neat things. So all these Pokemon can hit hard. Not Whimsicott, but all these Pokemon can hit hard while still offering more to the team. So like you get Haze, you get Baton Pass, even you get like things like Flip Turn with Vaporeon, but you also get the potential for a tank. You get the potential for an offensive Pokemon. There's a lot of different variety in the ways that you can run these Pokemon, and so it's really good in draft to have versatile Pokemon like that. Vivian, I love Vivian. This was a personal pick. Um, it gets Friend Guard, but it also gets Compound Eyes with Hurricane and Sleep Powder. And it gets, what is it, like 90, 89 speed? Yeah. So, like, it's decently fast, and it has practically, I think it's like 90, it's over 90% accurate Sleep Powders. And Hurricanes, I think Hurricane, I'm actually not sure if Hurricane is above 90 or not, but it has really accurate sleep patterns in Hurricanes with compound eyes. And then you can also run it as a supportive set with like things like Friend Guard and Pollen Puff and Rage Powder and Sleep Powder and Protect, um, with like a focus set or something. So like it has a couple of different ways that it can be run. So like it's it's I don't want to say it's the second best flying type, but it's a good flying type in the sense that it also has Hurricane that is also accurate, quite like Pelipper does. It's not as accurate as Pelipper, but it's quite good. Often 90 base special attack, it's not the best, but it's still a Hurricane, and so it'll still hit pretty hard, and always has the chance for confusion. So really, Vivian is very annoying in the sense that it redirects you, which can take away a lot of plans. It can hurricane you and accidentally confuse you, which is devastating in the middle of a match. It can put you to sleep, which is also devastating. And it can do that all twice because it has like a focus sash or something. And so it's very consistent. Um, but I also have a nice shiny of it that is like one of the different regional forms. So I'll have to show that off one week. Electros, it's an electric type with levitate. It's always nice. Um, I can't speak too much on it because I kind of drafted it for one reason, but I'm excited to show it off. So we'll see how that goes. But it is very solid. It has good base stats. Like it's kind of consistent. It's a little slow, but with Tailwind or Trick Room, it's a good speed tier to hit because it means you can either outspeed things in Tailwind or underspeed things in Trick Room depending on the matchup, which is very nice. And like 85, 80, 80 really isn't bad bulk. And then 115 or 105 depending on what type, like whether I wanted to run it physically offensive or specially offensive, just like I was talking about with the previous team. The same thing with Zoroark. Zoroark is a little bit of a mixed attacker as well, but it's really fast and causes a lot of disruptions. Like if I bring Zoroark on the team for the week, I don't even have to bring it. But now you know that there's a threat of, hey, there's a Zoroark that could be on the field. But like you won't know until you attack it. And so that can put you in situations where it's like, okay, maybe I have an Armarouge and like a Vaporeon on the field or something, and you have some sort of like psychic type. Then all of a sudden, there's always this one-off chance that one of them's a Zoroark, and then now you just got like O-code, right? By like choice specs, Dark Pulse or something. Um, so it's always a possibility. But outside of that, you also get things like Taunt, you get Snarl, you get some disruption stuff, you get U-turn, and you get it all on a fast Pokemon. That's also really annoying to deal with. So it's like you get a lot of different options with it for 3 points, and so I think it's a very good deal. But outside of that, I don't think this is my best team. I've consistently put myself in like S tier lately. I think my team is just it's weird, right? Like you have Whimsicott, you have Goldango, but then like the rest are I mean, Palmot's pretty good too. But then the rest are like interesting picks on their own. And so the team's ability to do well depends not on the Pokemon or the archetype anymore. It depends on how well I can utilize their different sets and create a good cohesive team every week. And so how I do this season with this team will be dependent on how I do as a player rather than how good my draft is. And so for that reason, although there's not too many flaws, like the types are pretty well balanced out here. Like the ones that are weaknesses, they're weaknesses by like one. Um, so even though I have a lot of different options, I have both forms of speed control and Tailwind and Trick Room. I have a lot of different choices for how I can run it. I don't think it's my best team, and so for that reason, I think I'm putting in an A because I think it'll be a fight every week for me to take a win, which is nice. Always fun. The eruptions. I wanted this guy. I got it stolen from me. Outside of that, it's yeah. I mean, it's Hisuian Typhlosion. You get a nice eruption. You get Frisk as well. Immune to Fake Out. Like you're just hitting things really hard and blowing things up. So you can run like choice specs with Tailwind. You can run Scarf with Helping Hand. You can run all sorts of things. Or like if the team is slow, just run it by itself and then use eruption anyway. And so it's really annoying to deal with because it's very difficult, especially after like a terrestrialization, to actually get it down in HP enough to where eruption's not doing that much. Um, Especially for like one turn. Like yeah, you kind of have like one turn to shut this thing down, and if you don't, you lose two Pokemon or take a lot of damage. Um, Salamence is good. It can be run physically offensively. It can be run specially offensively. It can be run as a supportive thing with a little bit of tailwind and stuff. And it's just generally bulky and has good types. The type distribution on this team, immaculate, very nice. Um, yeah, very nice. I don't think you need like maybe you're missing a dark type, but like the other ones, you're not really worried about not having some of the other types, but then you're also very balanced in your weaknesses, which is nice. Um, Volbeat's Prankster Tailwind too, so it's like you have options for your Hisuian Typhlosion to eruption in a really nice setting. So you can taunt with Volbeat. You can set up to stop Trick Room. You can set up Tailwind for Typhlosion or Salamence or Tinkaton even. Tinkaton is nice because you get a lot of disruption options. Like you get Taunt, you get Thunderwave, you get Fake Out, but you also get a really heavy hitting Gigaton Hammer. So it's like you get options with it, and it's great in Tailwind. Like if you see Volbeat and Tinkaton, expect a Tailwind Gigaton Hammer coming your way at Mach 15. Like it'll do damage. Um, Especially if you like Terra Steel or something. And then my Lodic to dissuade some Intimidate stuff as well was very nice, and also is just a very consistent water type. It's one of the ones that gets Scald as well, and it gets Haze too. Like it's just very good in general. Very consistent water type, very nice, and definitely a good addition to the team. Pachirisu, I'll be honest, some of the like speed control and follow me options, they're like a little bit smaller, a little more frail than you typically want. Like Volbeat's nice. It's just it doesn't do much outside of the prankster stuff. And then Pachirisu does follow me pretty well, but that's also pretty much it outside of like Super Fang, which it does get. It also gets Encore, I guess, but for the most part, Super Fang. Um, oh no, no, that's not right. Tinkaton gets taunt. Yeah, okay. Yeah, okay. I was worried that Volbeat was the only one with taunt, but it's not. Lilligant, Lilligant's good. I'm happy it ended up here instead of like some Sunrune team, but unfortunately, it is also 105 base speed, pretty solid grass type and fighting type attacker, but also gets things like fast sleep powder and fast after you for like a Hisuian Typhlosion. If they want to run like bulk and max special attack or something, now you can have after you to get those eruptions off first while still having bulk and specially offensive investment. Um, Dunsparce gets a lot of annoying tools just because it's a Dunsparce evolution, like Serene Grace stuff, like even Headbutt and Thunderwave and things. It's probably really annoying. But it's also just all around pretty solid. It's got good bulk as well. Very similar to Vaporeon in the sense that it's like got really high HP and then good defenses, and then it can also hit relatively hard. Like I get maybe not. I mean, like base 100 attack is all right, but you're really just sitting on the field for a long time and being very annoying, which is nice, especially if you get like Tailwind up and you start headbutting things with Serene Grace, and now all of a sudden you get a fake out every turn. So that's interesting. Sandaconda, it's all right. I honestly think for the most part people draft Sandaconda either because it's their team mascot or because it's a ground type that makes their type charts look pretty. But it's not a ground type that I would be consistently bringing. Like I dare argue that Salamence with a Terra ground is probably a better ground type than Sandaconda is. But it gets Sandspit, which can be interesting in certain matchups with weather. Um, Outside of that, I mean, it gets like Coil and Glare. which do what you want. This team has a lot of paralysis, actually. Now that I look at it, and I don't know that I like that. Like I think there are four different Pokemon that get maybe five different Pokemon that get Thunder Wave. Oh yeah, no, but these two get Glare. Yeah, so like you have five different options for paralyzing your opponent, and that's kind of absurd. So I'm not looking forward to playing this Pokemon or this team at all. It seems like very annoying. It's got a lot of offensive threats. Um, but yeah, I also don't think it's like too standoutish though, because really, it's like yeah, what do you bring? These two, and then maybe these two, or like Lilligant. I don't know. Outside of Typhlosion, it just doesn't feel like it really has that same immediate pressure that a lot of the other teams do. Like Salamence is good. It just struggles with its move pool. It's just not got great options because it's like Dragon and Flying, so it's not got great physical options to begin with. You get like Dragon Claw, which is nice. It's consistent, but it's base 80 power, and then Dual Wing Beat is inaccurate and also not Technician boosted like Scyther. So unless you're running Terra Blast, I mean Terra Blast. I mean yeah, Terra Blast is a good option on Salamence, but beyond that, I don't know. It just doesn't carry the same offensive pressure, but it looks really annoying to play. Like Volbeat Disruption, Pachirisu Follow Me stuff, Tinkaton Disruption with like Fake Out, Taunt, Paralysis, double paralysis from this, and you get put to sleep. It's like, it looks really annoying to play. But again, it doesn't. I don't know that it particularly synergizes well. No, it does. It does synergize well. Yeah, I don't know. There, there's just there's no standout Mon for me. Like I think this team is consistent, and I think it can be fine, but I think it depends on the ability of the player, right? Like I don't think that this team will carry. Who is it? V Dog? Yeah, I think so. But I don't think the team alone will carry. And so for that reason, I think I have to put it in the same tier as mine, which is A tier, which is like just because the team depends on the player rather than the team being good enough to do well regardless of how you play. And so I think that this team needs good play, it needs a good pilot, and it will do well, but it kind of requires on someone being good at the game as well. Philadelphia Polytoads. There's a lot of little guys on this team. Murkrow, Clefairy, Pikachu. So many little guys. Um, it's interesting. I like look Dragonite and Lucario are nice. You get upper hand. Even Pikachu gets upper hand. That's crazy. But you get upper hand with Inner Focus and like Terra Normal with a weakness policy or something. You go first, get the +2, and now you got +2 Terra Normal Extreme Speed Dragonite targeting something down. Uh, but Dragonite's also been really weird lately, and that people have been running it as like a supportive set, like Fire Spin or Ice Spinner or something. Like it's kind of been crazy. Um, just how many ways people have figured out how to use Dragonite. You get Tailwind too, so it's like Dragonite alone is pretty powerful. It's pretty good. Can be run in several different ways, even though we generally see it in like either Assault Vest stuff or we get like Choice Band, Extreme Speed, or Weakness Policy stuff with Upper Hand, or um, I think you can have other options. Like both of its abilities are really good. Multi Scale is great. Inner Focus is also great to block fake outs. Um, but it just has different options to be reliable and consistent. And it's kind of hard to tell what it's going to be doing on team sheet opening. So like forcing your opponent to play a game without knowing what Dragonite is going to be able to do can oftentimes put you up into like a 1 game lead, which is very nice. Because then you only have to win one of the next two. But then Murkrow, honestly, I don't really know where Murkrow fits on this team. I can't exactly say that I see the vision on that one. Like Murkrow is usually nice if you're bringing middling speed Pokemon up. But the issue is Dragonite already has extreme speed, and it's also decently fast. So like you're not gonna get too much use out of being Prankster Tailwind boosted. Like you can set your own Tailwind if you're desperate enough as Dragonite. But Gardevoir can be boosted up, but it's got 125 special attack. Like it's okay. It's probably the second best fairy type outside of like um Sylveon, I'd say. It's like this is a really good fairy type. Um but his abilities aren't great. Like it gets telepathy, which you can use with like Earthquake Dragonite or something. So that's nice. But it's very psychic. And that is probably the one Pokemon that sort of benefits from the Tailwind boost. But I wouldn't bring Murkrow Gardevoir in most situations. Like I'd much rather have a fake out option that isn't Pikachu. Like fake out next to Gardevoir instead. Um, and like Gardevoir Dragonite is a much more threatening lead than Murkrow Gardevoir is. So I just don't really know where Murkrow sits on the team because like Lucario's fast enough. Gastrodon won't be fast enough after a Tailwind. Charizard's fast enough. Rotom I guess is in a similar situation to Gardevoir where it's like yeah it can work, but I'd much rather see like Rotom Murkrow than I would facing down like Rotom Dragonite. It's just having Murkrow. I think T. Clark joked about it, but I really do think that unless you're truly running a hyper offensive team with like something like Goldango or whatever, like really wants the Tailwind on turn one and can put it to good use, like I don't know that these Pokemon can put it to good use on turn one. Like unless that is the situation, I don't think Murkrow is worth playing the 3v4. However, you do get Quash, which is interesting because you get kind of different options. It's very Sableye reminiscent, but it doesn't get a lot of the tools that Sableye likes. Like it doesn't get Encore, it doesn't get Disable as Disruption. It doesn't get like it does get Quash, but it doesn't get Prankster Will-Wisp or Thunderwave. Um, so it's just kind of there, and so I definitely don't think this team is one that can take advantage of Murkrow being on it. Like I think there are teams that Murkrow is great on, and there's a reason why it's so high in points. Is like there are times like if you have like Terra Ground Garchomp that's using Earthquake all the time, in Tailwind, like it's great there, but it's just not good this team. So I definitely think that that's one area that can be kind of sought after. Lucario, it's a decent steel type. It gets upper hand for Dragonite. It also gets extreme speed. So now you're facing down two extreme speed mods, maybe. Um, but overall, I mean, it's a fighting and steel type. It's good for coverage. It's good. It finishes up the fairy core or the fantasy core, and then it also gets things like close combat or sphere or whatever to hit things. Like I mean, Lucario, I'd say probably a Terra fighting Lucario with Aura Sphere OHKOs both of the Ursalunas. I want to say. I don't know. I'd have to do the calcs, but I think it's a viable option, and he's pretty consistent. Gastrodon is a very similar situation to Swampert, but you get Storm Drain. Unfortunately, I don't think there's much on this team that benefits from Storm Drain. But you get Ground and Water type that has Yawn and Icy Wind and Ice Beam. So it's like it's consistent and it helps in certain matchups. Like against that Rain team, Gastrodon's probably great. Like you get Earth Power to hit Arcaludon, and then you also redirect any water moves, which is very nice. Because then you can do something like Terra Fire in certain situations, depending on what team you're facing. I probably wouldn't against that team, but you can, and then Storm Drain will protect you, which is nice. Or like Terra Ground even. So like if you have Terra Ground Dragonite or something with Earthquake, and you have well, maybe not earthquake. I don't know. It's kind of weird. Storm Drain would redirect those weaknesses, anyways. Clefairy's good if you have strong Pokemon to take advantage of it, like strong frail Pokemon. Like really, 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 this team is just lacking in noticeable offensive threats. I think kind of similar to the last team, where it's like Dragonite's good. It's just it struggles just like Salamence does as far as getting good stab moves because it is Dragonite flying. So it's like you don't get that many good options on the physical end. So really, like Dragonite's been shifting further and further away from its stab moves. Like it's started running like extreme speed and ice spinner as its only moves or something, and it's like neither of those are stab moves. So you're just not doing as much damage. Like you're doing 1.5 times less damage than if you were just using something else, um, which is not great. Gardevoir is good. Like 125 special attack Moonblast, it'll hit things, but it's also frail. So like maybe that and Clefairy could work. But then they're both weak to steel types. So something like a Make It Rain is brutal to Gardevoir and Clefairy. Like it, I don't know. It's kind of the opposite of that situation of the other redirection with Electivire that redirects for Alolan Ninetales, in the sense that that had a resistance to steel, so it made it really beneficial to redirect it away. But Clefairy has a weakness to pretty much all the weaknesses that Gardevoir has, um, which kind of puts it in a position where it's a little hard to convince myself that it's like, that's a good redirection. Like Clefairy's good and it has good use as follow me. But when it goes down in two hits to like a steel move and another steel move or a poison move or something, it's hard to justify bringing over some other option, especially at the point value that it's at. But it's good. I just would rather see it with instead of Murkrow. Like if you're left with like Murkrow Clefairy in the end game or something, like that's not good. Like all the opponent has to do is deal with two Pokemon, and then they basically get the win. Um, so I definitely prefer to drop Murkrow over dropping Clefairy, though. Pikachu, it's Pikachu. Definitely drop Murkrow and like Pikachu's the mascot, right? Like Philadelphia Pikachu's. That's nice. Um, I would drop Murkrow for a good fake out user that's also offensive. Uh, but yeah, I mean, like if you want Pikachu just for the mascot points, like yeah, that's fine. But it's not really doing much, and it being your only fake out option is not good. Charizard's fine. Charizard with Sunny Day is probably fine, but I would honestly like to see like kind of both of those go. Like Charizard's okay. You can use Charizard decently well, but like Charizard alone, for me, it looks like Charizard is the only reason you got Murkrow for like Sunny Day and Tailwind, and it's like I don't think that's worth it. Like I would rather have two other mods, but I think Charizard by itself also isn't that bad. Um, like if you have Scarf Overheat or something, you probably do a fair bit of damage, so I wouldn't be too concerned about it. Um, but it just doesn't do much for this team outside of being a fire type. So you already have some potential for Terra Flying, Terra Blast. And it's not like, I mean, like, yeah, you have Rain Dance if you wanted to run like Hurricane Charizard. But then at that point, just run Hurricane Dragonite. You're only sacrificing, what is it, like 9 special attack? Like, there's no reason for this one to be here outside of being a fire type. And I don't think it's the best fire type for the points. Rotom Mo, I like Rotom Mo. Big fan. Good grass type, good electric type. Consistent all around for all the other reasons that I described with Rotom Wash. It's just, it's slightly less used just because Leaf Storm is a little. Leaf Storm and Grass type is worse than having the Electric Water with Levitate because it's just. It has a few more weaknesses and it doesn't hit quite as much and it has the special attack drop every time you use its signature move or whatever. But at the same time, it's consistent. It's good. So I definitely don't see any issues with it being here. But yeah, overall for this team, definitely Murkrow. Murkrow is out of place. And Charizard is the only thing keeping it in place, and I don't think it's that good. Like I don't think Charizard Micro is worth it. Pikachu, I assume, is there for the style points, but yeah, definitely these two need to prove their worth to me. I think, and you also got some weaknesses and stuff, and it tends to be the yeah, like fair. I mean, like this isn't even a weakness if you get rid of Marco, and then like yeah, yeah. It's okay. I think it has the potential to do well. I think Dragonite Lucario stuff is cool. I think Gardevoir is strong. I think Clefairy is strong. I think Rotom is consistent. But I just don't see that winning every week. And so it's not the worst team that I've seen. It's not great. I'll put it as our first C tier. Um, Blazing Blazikins, I think, or something like that. Very neat. I was thinking about Vascular Agent Polytoad. I didn't do it though. I think this six is actually quite consistent. I don't like that you're setting Rain against Volcarona, but at the same time, Volcarona can set up so hard, and Basculegion doesn't always need the Rain setup. So, like, if you get Annihilate Volcarona and then, like, one of the Grimmsnarl or Endora Electivas and then, like, a Basculegion, you just hit hard and you have a lot of different options for setting up. Like, you can do the Annihilate stuff to, like, bulk up and get ready for that, and you can get Volcarona Quiver Dance up, and Basculegion is just good off the rip. You can do Choice Scarf Adaptability, Terra Ghost, Last Respects or something at the end, and it's like, wow, you just do a lot of damage. So like all of those Pokemon are great supports and have a lot of damage options. And then Gothorita arguably introduces a new avenue to this team. Is like, okay, you've got screens and you've got Politoed, set up Perish Song. It's like, okay, how do you break through in 3 turns? And that's difficult for a lot of teams because it means you can just like Perish Song fake out, protect, and then you have 1 turn to act and finish things off or get to a point where you can switch, and then they just protect again, and then boom, you're gone, or like switch or something. And you've lost both of those Pokemon. So it's very interesting. It'll be interesting to see if that ever comes up. I do think this team has an option for Perish Song. It'll be nice to see. Unfortunate. Well, Electrode's fine. Electabuzz is like always going to be better if you bring an electric type. But then unfortunately, I don't know how great Donphan is. Like it's all right. It's got 120. Actually, it's got 120 attack, so it can hit pretty hard with ground moves. It's like similar to Crocodile, but it just doesn't get the Intimidate. It doesn't have the second typing. It doesn't have the good ability, or well, Intimidates. Yeah. It gets sturdy, I guess, but like I'll be interested to see how it's used. I think it has potential. I just not at 50 base speed without Trick Room. Do you not have? Oh no, I think Gothorita is your only Trick Room. Because I know Volcarona gets Tailwind actually, which honestly, a supportive Volcarona with like Struggle Bug and Tailwind and stuff is probably good on this team. And so I'll be interested to see it. But yeah, Gothorita is the only Trick Room setter. So like Donphan, I don't know. You just don't have many speed control options. I mean, yeah, you got Electro Webs, but Donphan's not fast enough to take advantage of Electro Web. Generally, the Pokemon that want to take advantage of Electro Web are like Basculegion, which is base 78 speed. So you got a little more to work with to begin with. But that's just not true for Donphan. So unfortunately, I'm excited to see it, but I don't know how strong this is. However, very strong core, good 6 mon or 7 mon. But some of these things like Volcarona Rain, you don't have too much to enable Annihilate. To be honest, outside of like screens, like I don't think anything gets beat up here. Yeah, okay, yeah. Annihilate gets its own beat up. Okay. Um, yeah, I don't think you have too many options to set up Annihilate outside of bulk up, which is fine. But like Electabuzz follow me with like bulk up or quiver dance is always going to be good. And then Basculegion's hard to break through because it just tears through teams. Grimmsnarl is a great disruption. I think overall it's good. I just think it doesn't synergize as well as some of the S tier teams. So I mean, I expect like this six or maybe these five and this one like 99% of the time. And so for that reason, I do think it's good though. I think it's a solid A tier. Um, oh my gosh, Ursa Luna for giraffe. Is that really how it's spelled? I thought okay, never mind. Um, yeah, Ursaluna for giraffe. Follow me redirection with Magmortar. Magmortar is good offensively too. Masquerada gets some cool stuff. It can break through teams. It has really nice coverage for like with Flower Trick as well to like break through setup and gets knockoff, which is useful and strong on it. It's fast. It's really fast. Gets Protean. Um, it's generally very nice. It gets Trick Room too, which is nice. There's a lot of Trick Room setters on this team. So it has a lot of different options, and you can run like Focus Sash Overgrow with getting brought down to Focus Sash and then using Flower Trick with like Terra Grass makes its Flower Tricks really, 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 really strong. Look at this. 3 green stats. I don't know that I've ever seen 3 green stats. That's crazy. Essentially, that means that the base stats of this team is really high, which is nice. Um, yeah, like these two, they never die, and they're really annoying to break through. Like this one in particular, if there was one Pokemon that I could remove from ever existing, it would be this one. This one right here. It has great abilities. Like I don't know that it's ever come up, but if I feel like T Clark might have run Unnerve against like Sugarberry at one point or something, which is crazy. Um, but Bulletproof is good too because I think it does Bulletproof make you immune to Sphere? I think it might. Um, yeah, I think it does, which is kind of crazy. So never mind that Lucario person. Do not bring Sphere against Ursaluna. But I mean Guts. Guts is really good. Just bring the Flame Orb, or even don't bring the Flame Orb and just run Guts. And then if they try to Will-O-Wisp you, if you got like a Clear Amulet or Assault Vest or something, then their Will-O-Wisp makes it so you do more damage instead. So like Guts is just always good. Um, Armor Tail for a draft. I mean, like you can probably technically run Sapsifer, but you're going to be running it with Armor Tail 99% of the time to block all the fake outs and block things like Volbeat, Prankster, Taunt, and stuff like that. Fur Draft is just very consistent. It can be run offensively, it can be run defensively, it can be run as a like great supportive mon with a bunch of Trick Room. It can get it's kind of stupid. I think it gets like Power Swamp or something that's really really annoying and that like if your opponent sets up and then you have Fur Draft, you can just like steal their setup, which is crazy. Um Magmortar again is good follow me but can redirect. Drifloon is interesting here because there's no real thing that I can see off the bat that says, oh yeah, get an unburden boost. But it gets flare boost. So like I don't know. I'm kind of interested to see it. Cause like unburden's typically the thing you see. But it's also not a mon that you can get like focus sesh really working on because it's just so bulky. Um but flare boost I would be interested to see. But the unfortunate part is like if you get flare boost, then you can't use your flame orb on Ursaluna. Or I guess you could just run Aftermath. Who knows? But it's good. It's good Tailwind. I mean, maybe not good. It's okay Tailwind. It's fast enough. But really, I mean, it's bulky enough to stay around, which is the main thing. So I'm interested to see how it's used. I think it's okay. I think it'll be fine. I don't think this team will run Tailwind very often, to be honest. Vikavolt, another electric type with Levitate, and I think that's great. Um, it's got 145 base special attack. This thing is just absurdly strong. I think it's like right by Chandelure. in special attack. But yeah, strong electric type moves with like bulky enough to live a hit or two, and then work in Trick Room by being so slow, like 43 speed. Like Vikavolt is going to take names if Trick Room gets set up. Like Bug Buzz is already base 90. So is Thunderbolt. So it's got good, consistent, strong moves, and then it also has a base 145 special attack. Slap a Life Orb on this thing, and it is going to town. It'll tear through teams. So I'm excited to see it. I'm a Vikavolt fan. Empoleon's great. I mean, there's not really a fantasy core on this team so much, but it's always nice to have a steel type. And then water type is just good defensively. So like steel water is very strong. But then most importantly, it has competitive. So it's very like, hey, you with intimidate, please stop. And so it's a very good intimidate deterrent. Um, which is always nice for Ursa Luna. Yippee. Ursa Luna has 140 attack. Why? Um, yeah, so that's rather annoying because it means you can't really bring Intimidate as like your Ursa Luna answer, because then you have to face the wrath of a +2 Empoleon, which is kind of dangerous. I mean, off of a 111 special attack, like that's, times 2, you can deal quite a bit of damage with Flash Cannon, Water Pledge. It also gets Water Pledge for that consistent, just like Swampert. So that's nice. Other than that, I don't have too much to say about it. Like it gets Haze, it gets Flip Turn. Um, but yeah, Medicham. I'm a big Medicham fan. I recommended Medicham last season to T Clark, and then this season again. But Medicham's just good. It's very strong. It can nuke things, but then it also has some good disruption stuff, like um, Trick Room, Fake Out. It gets skill swap, so like Pure Power. You guys want to see a Pure Power Ursa Luna this season? At T Clark if you do, because I do. I want to see it, just not against me though, please. Um, but I'd be excited to see it. It'd be fun. But then outside of that, like you get a close combat or a Zin headbutt or something off of ×2 attack, like you'll do a lot of damage, and then you still get the same fake out and stuff, which is very nice. And then you could set Trick Room for Ursaluna on the way out or something. Then you can run Focus Sash because like this team doesn't really have a lot of Pokemon that want to be running Focus Sash. So it means you get 2 of those moves off, which is nice. Grambull's interesting. It's not a Pokemon I typically look at, but it does get Intimidate, and it does get pretty strong play roughs from 120 base attack. It's just rather frail. I mean, not like super frail, but like on the frailer end. It's really slow. But that's actually kind of beneficial for this team because it means you can run in Trick Room pretty well. So I'd be interested to see what it does. Like I see it gets Taunt and Encore, but I think maybe you might run like Taunt, Encore, Play Rough, Protect or something. So I'd be interested to see how it gets used. I like its shiny. It's a nice tan. But outside of that, like this team's kind of absurd. I don't think I don't I don't think in my right mind I can ever put a team with regular Ursaluna below S unless they really messed up their draft. But this complements it so well. It's like a lot of great Trick Room Pokemon. The best Trick Room setter. Great options out of Trick Room as well. And then having Follow Me for redirection as well. Like this team can force Trick Room down mid and win anyways. So I definitely think that this is one of the teams that doesn't rely on its pilot at all. um, so easy S tier. And then the last one for the Skirmish League. 2 Fire Intimidates. Very interesting. Got AW. What is AW? I don't know. Oh, Abyss Walkers. Yeah, for anyone wondering, this is Abyss Walkers. I didn't. They don't have a logo yet, so I just googled Abyss Walker and picked the first photo. But yeah, so Arcanine Hisui is always good, but it's really best in like Arcanine Hisui is one of the ones that you might want Murkrow with. Because like having the priority tailwind to get like a flare blitz with Rockhead or a head smash with Rockhead as well. Like getting one of those two off deals so much damage. That, or you can use Intimidate and like spam Rock Slide really fast, and now you got weakened Pokemon that aren't doing that much, and you're still getting good like rock spread damage to them, like or Extreme Speed, Terra Normal, Choice Band. Like you have options with Arcanine, and so I really do like it in draft. I think it has a lot of different versatility. Why why did you pick up all three Intimidate users? Save some for the rest of us. Hitmontop is good, and Incineroar is good. They both do kind of similar stuff. They, outside of their stab moves, they have Intimidate as their primary move, and then or primary ability, and then Fake Out and like Taunt. Or I guess only Incineroar has Taunt, but then you get like Feint on Hitmontop. You get Wide Guard on Hitmontop, Upper Hand on Hitmontop. But Incineroar gets things like Porting Shot, um, Will-O-Wisp as well. So they're like a bunch of different disruption at the start, and then Meowstic, same thing. Salazzle's also another fire type fake out. So like there's a ton of overlapping roles here, which causes a ton of overlapping weaknesses. Hint, hint, wink, wink. Um, which is not good. But you also just have the privilege of having Incineroar. How did Incineroar last 3 rounds? Fraud Incineroar is dropped off. Um, but yeah, like you have disruption in the form of Salazzle as well. That gets like Acid Spray, gets Encore, gets Taunt, gets Fake Out, gets. I actually don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it gets, but it has options with things like Overheat with the eject pack or something. I think it's eject pack overheat, where you can just like send it in, fake out, do your little disruption, and then overheat and get the switch out, and then come back in the late game with another fast overheat with Oblivious to like stop yourself from being taunted if you want to like do encore stuff or whatever. Like it's just good. It has different options. I think we raised the point, so I don't know that it's as good a value as it used to be, but it used to be really good value. Um, Superior, it has Contrary, and with Stellar Terra, it actually it gets quite out of hand quite fast. So like if you have some sort of redirection, which unfortunately this team does not, because Raichu getting Follow Me is a complete lie. That is way, 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 way back in like some early generation, at like Gen 3 or something. But it doesn't get Follow Me anymore. So this team has no redirection. It has 3 different fake out options. So like maybe you just like keep cycling your fake outs and getting stellar terror boosts on uh superior. But outside of that, I mean it's fast and it can get set up pretty quick, which is nice. And then contrary is always good because it's like if you get hit with a snarl or an eerie impulse or something, you can just or even honestly, it's got the same attack as it does special attack. So if you get like intimidate boosts, your Stellar Terra could honestly start like your Stellar Terra Blast could start becoming just a physical move if you keep getting intimidated, and then you're still doing more and more and more damage. So it's interesting. Um, Meowstic is great disruption. I really like Meowstic. It's very nice in a sense because it gets Prankster, it gets Fake Out, it gets both screens, it gets Thunderwave. Um, and it gets some other moves too, I'm sure. But it's very nice, and I'm sure it gets weather stuff as well. It's very nice in that it's like a cheap prankster mon that also serves a lot of disruption and like field control, and it's also kind of a cute little Pokemon. I like it a lot. Um, but I look forward to seeing how it's used, especially on this team, because I feel like it has potential. I'm honestly not sure. What does this thing get? Like, what status moves do we get? Or not special status. Fake Tears. Fake Tears is really good. Yawn. Yeah, you could Prankster Yawn, which is kind of nuts. Prankster Skill Swap as well. Prankster Psych Up. Prankster Gravity. That's interesting. Unfortunately, I don't think there's a good mon to abuse it, but Prankster Gravity is really cool. Prankster Imprison, which is nice. Prankster Psychic Terrain. Nope, no expanding force user. Oh well. Tickle's nice. Trick Room. Yeah, so you get Imprison Trick Room. That's nice. Um, I don't think you really want to be setting up Trick Room because yeah, you have a very fast team on average. So I mean, it has a lot of cool moves, and I'm excited to see how it gets used. I just don't think it has all the right tools that are needed for this team in particular. But then Raichu's good, I guess. He gets Lightning Rod, but there's not too much to protect from electric moves. And then it really only gets like Fake Out Nuzzle, and then like an electric attack. I don't. Does it even get Super Fang? I don't think it does. Yeah, it doesn't even get Super Fang. Like it gets Electro Web and Encore. Oh, it gets Endeavor, Focus Sash Endeavor. That's kind of nice. But outside of that, I mean, it's okay. It's a good one. I don't think it's the most expensive mod, which it doesn't deserve to be. It's fast though, which like all of this team is, to be honest. And then Braviary, it's all right. Braviary's average bulk, average to slightly below average speed. Like 80 base speed is eh. But with the amount of like disruption, like fake outs and I think Superior even gets like glare or something, and then like it's fast enough to where like a Raichu Electro Web matters, and you start out speeding things, and then you get like strong Brave Birds and stuff. So like having a strong flying type is always good in draft because there's so many things weak to flying. But beyond that, um, yeah, I think this is what is AW? I don't know what it is. Am I blind? Oh yeah, Abyss Walkers. It's right here. Goodness, I am blind. Yeah. I mean, I think C tier. It's got good Pokemon. Like Incineroar is good. Um, Meowstic is good. I just don't know how good all of these are on the same team because it's not as though you can self-prop contrary. So I don't know why you took up all the Intimidators when you kind of want all the Intimidators on someone else's team. So you get the Defiant boost from Braviary and the contrary from Superior. Like I would honestly just pick one of them, like keep Ensign or something, and then trade the rest away or something. But I'd be interested to see if anyone picks any of them up. Um, yeah. Anyways, so that's the list for SK Skirmish.